I'd like to thank the Toro Corporation for their many years of continued support of the turfgrass industry.
This is for Turf Today, celebrating their 100th podcast.
What? That's still on the internet?
You were a guest on 3 episodes.
Oh. Well, I only remember 2 of them. One of them I was pretty hammered. Okay, I'd like to thank the Turf Today podcast on their 100th episode.
Let's maintain that turf today. Get up and brush off the dew on that turf today. Turf today. Turf today. Cut it and roll that dew on that turf today. Turf today. Turf today. Set up, they about to come through on that turf today. Turf today. Turf today. Get up. Turf today. Get up. Let's get out the way. Here comes first play. Let's maintain that turf today.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. When selecting golf course maintenance equipment, reliability is essential. That's why Toro products are the choice of golf courses around the world. They know they can count on Toro mowers, utility vehicles, and more to work. They also know they can rely on Toro for the innovations and engineering that blend high productivity with a beautiful course appearance. For products that get the job done, visit toro.com/golf. Toro, always solving, always evolving. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Turf Today on the Superintendent Network, brought to you by Toro. And ladies and gentlemen, number 100. Congratulations to everybody that's helped with the show. It's been a lot of fun, and we're going to have a great day today.
Brian and Adam, when I think of dynamic duos, I think of Batman Robin, Bonnie Clyde, Brady and Gronk, and Adam, for you got to go with Gretzky and Messier. But in the turf world, you two are dynamic duos. Congratulations on 100th episode. Keep up the great work.
Going to be a lot of thank yous, and we're going to be hearing from some old guests and some people checking in with us, which is going to be a lot of fun. But we first wanted to start off by thanking you, the listener. This show would never have gotten as far as it has without people listening, passing it around, giving us ratings, writing reviews, engaging with us and telling us what they like, what they don't like, different ideas for the show. This is built on a community. It's built by the community. It's built for the community. And we're very, very proud that we can present this to you every week. It's been something that's been a lot of fun for us, as I've said, and it's been enlightening getting to meet all these different people and hear these stories and get to learn and laugh and, shed a few tears as we go along. It certainly made me a better person. It's made me a lot more aware of what's going on and going to make me a better father, just getting to learn all the lessons about leadership and everything that goes on at the golf course. So very, very grateful to have found this place and this community, and we're so ready to continue to dive into a lot more things and a lot more innovation and different people and different stories as our industry grows and as things go. Things are always going to be evolving, and we are going to, try and be at the forefront and try and help continue the education and the different ideas and the different knowledge that's been passed down from people before us. So, at the end of the day, Brian and I have always said we're not the ones in front of the camera. We're not the ones here. You're here to listen to. It's all about the stories. It's all about people coming on, having their own episode and their own platform to speak their mind and get their message out and thank people that they've worked with and tell stories. We enjoy getting to kind of host these conversations that are just us at the shop, people at the shop. Meet a lot of different characters and a lot of different great stories, a lot of hardworking men and women along the way. And we're very, very grateful we get to tell these stories and be here to sit at these microphones.
Hey Turf Today, Emily and Barley here from Seven Canyons in Sedona, Arizona. Wishing you guys a major congratulations on 100 episodes, and we can't wait for 100 more.
Before we go any further, we are certainly going to have some fun today. However, I do have some devastating news that needs to be shared, and this is not an easy one, but we wanted to pass on our condolences to the family of Derek Lee, who unfortunately lost his life last week and is no longer with us. Derek was a guest on the show, a young, bright individual from San Jose, California, who, my goodness, you go back and listen to that episode. He was just so dialed in with a lot of the things he'd learned and things he wanted to try. And, I certainly saw him as somebody who was going to be competitive and work hard and push this industry. So it's a really tough one. I struggled with it for the first couple days after hearing the news. So I am sorry to anybody who's close to Derek, who knows Derek, who got to talk to him and interact with him throughout his life. He was a big fan of Turf Today. He bought a lot of the merchandise and would write into us and send us photos and videos every week. He was a great person. I'm hearing he was a great friend and a great worker as well. So it's devastating news. I don't have a ton of information right now other than they are having a funeral July 5th. There's a visitation, and July 6th they're doing a tribute. So that's at the Oak Hill Funeral Home in San Jose, California. If you want to get in touch with them, send out some flowers or something like that, we're certainly going to be sending something. I don't really have too much more information for you at this time. I've talked to a few people close to him, and we're just trying to respect all their privacy right now. And like I said, our condolences to the family and anybody who's close to Derek, because he was a great kid, and we certainly will be missed. Can we just get a quick moment of silence for Derek?
Brian, Adam, the old guy Trevor. Thanks so much for having me on episode 23. Hopefully you'll get me on again. Keep up the good work. You have the best podcast on turf in the industry.
Today on the show, Director of Golf Course Operations at Merion Golf Club, Paul B. Latshaw, and we are very, very grateful that he was able to join us today. This is an awesome interview, so turn this one up. Make sure you're paying attention. Paul has a lot of experience in the industry. He's got an amazing story, and yes, the son of a legend. Before we send you off to the interview with Paul, we want you to listen to a little message from my mentor, Jamie Knorr.
Adam, just wanted to take a quick second to congratulate you on not only Turf Today, but episode 100 being released later this week. Hard to believe it's been 10 years since I first hired you. As a pro goalie, trying to stay in shape over the summers, changing holes for me with his weighted vest on. A few years ago, you started Turf Today for our local club, just to keep our members informed on what was happening on the golf course. And look how far it's grown to share with people around the world and over 150,000 followers. I never would have thought it got this big, but I knew this is exactly what you wanted, and so proud of everything you've accomplished, and super excited to see where Turf Today continues to go in the future.
Sorry, my dog was scratching at the door there, so I figured I'd make sure to get him in.
Yeah, Percy's on the podcast today.
Well, he's sitting in next to us at least, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, he's listening in. Make sure you're not saying anything you're not supposed to.
Yep, exactly. By the way, how insane are those hoodies?
Oh my gosh, dude. Like,
Aren't those the best?
unbelievable. Yeah. No, they did a good job. I've never gotten anything from Swanee's before. It's the only thing that's weird is the pocket. Like, it's got kind of that, I don't know, maybe that's for golf.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing well.
Yeah, I appreciate you making the time for us here. I know it's been a little chaotic for you.
Yeah, a lot going on, and I think summer's finally coming here, so it's pretty warm today. Next week looks like we're in the soup.
You guys getting those hundreds this weekend like we are here?
We will next week. So I
Next
think
week.
today we're in the 90s, and dew points and humidity are off the charts. I mean, walking the course this morning and sweating through your pants. So it's one of those.
Jeez.
It's Philly. Philly is a pretty challenging place to grow grass.
It's an extra strength gold bond day, huh? Is that what you're saying?
It's really nice to meet you, Paul. We've heard from so many different people who have worked for you and who have talked about you and recommended that you come on the show. So we're very glad to have you. I know it's a busy time of year and a busy time for you personally. So thank you.
It's an honor to be on.
Awesome. First of all, how's your dad doing?
He's going to start immune therapy tomorrow. So protocol with this type of skin cancer, and it's moved through, it's in his lymph nodes, is surgery, and we ruled out surgery. The surgeon didn't even want to do it. It's 10 to 12 hours, and it's one of those deals that they don't even think they can get it all, and he's 84 years old. He probably wouldn't even live through the surgery. So we're going to do the immune therapy, and they're saying that's about 40 to 50%. It's never going to get rid of it. But if it shrinks the tumor, and what's causing it's on his neck, so he has like a headache and really like a really bad ear infection. And it's hard to believe. You think about it, he beat prostate cancer, beat esophagus cancer, and ultimately skin cancer might be his demise. Occupational hazard, I guess.
Yeah, well, we're thinking of you for sure, and certainly understand the complexity of this week and trying to maneuver things around. So, but yeah, definitely thinking of you guys. So, along those lines, tell us about what it was like growing up in that household, obviously, and the influence your father had on your career.
Well, like any other son, you want to be around your father. So my dad started his career at Jackson Country Club and lived on property. And I was just a toddler, and he'd tell stories that he'd be out, watering, and I'd want to water greens or water something, just hold the hose and, be flapping me all around. So, started there. And then when he moved to Shaker, it was the same thing. As you know, Brian, your dad works a lot of hours and is very demanding, and you want to be around him. And, what young boy doesn't want to go to a golf course and ride on a cart or potentially get to drive a cart a little bit? And so, weekends I would go in and, just be with him and go around the golf course. And, I was pretty young at that point. And, sleep in the truck whenever I was getting a little bit tired. And then same thing sort of occurred at Oakmont. When he took the job at Oakmont, I think my first year I was 12 years old and we had the PGA Championship. And so, I really spent a lot of time with them. And like anything else, your father is, for me, not just my father, he's my mentor. And, I maybe I'm biased, but he's the Michael Jordan of the business. I mean, so, having that tutelage and working for him through the years and at Oakmont was, a lot of fond memories. Actually, one of the funny things, him and I were watching the Open this past weekend, and I remember in '83, he watered all the greens himself. Now I was the hose person. We had a cart with a reel on it, and I would drive to the next green, plug it in, and then he would water all the greens himself, and I would get the hose. And then, but every night he prepped all the greens by himself. I mean, because everyone's got skill sets. His ability. That's before like moisture meters and soil pro. He didn't really use soil probes. He just unbelievably talented hand water. And I would say the same. I worked for Mr. Bader at Pine Valley. Same thing. The guy was just a gifted hand water. And I think sometimes people really don't realize the importance of being able to hand water, observe grass, push it to the edge. I think sometimes guys coming up get a little hung up on numbers. And, you got to use visual observation. And, the moisture meters have come out later in my career, and I still use them, but I use my knife more and just visual observations.
What are some of those things then that have carried on in your career that you learned in those early days of cruising around with your dad?
Obviously, as a young age, I wanted to get in the turf industry, and he, wanted me to work for some other people. So in '85, I went to work for Mr. Bader at Pine Valley. We had the Walker Cup. So I spent a summer working for Mr. Bader. And then I spent 2 summers working at the honors course for David Stone. You talk about the best of the best of being learning under. I mean, Mr. Bader was another one of those people that came in, take over a golf course, turn it around. And Mr. Stone was just, I mean, one of the most analytical people, made you really think about like why the problem was a problem. Did a lot of research. So I guess from what I learned the most about my father, and he became sort of the hired gun to come in and fix golf courses and get ready for championships, was perseverance. I mean, if you're coming into a course and they're making a change, potentially, close to a major event, there's potentially some issues. And he was a change agent, and he never settled for mediocrity. He always came up with programs. And sometimes, when you're doing these things, sometimes things go well, sometimes they don't go well. But his persistence and his quest for always getting the most amount done in the day and always pushing every day. I mean, and having, my dad and I are a little bit different. I mean, he's a little bit more maybe candid. And, he had no problem telling organizations, this is the way it's going to be. And I respect that out of him, but they were also in situations where they wanted change. So he was always timing things well, but I would say his persistence. And the other thing too, is you think about, you do this for a long time. And a lot of times you get hung up in the programs and you do the same thing. He was always pushing the envelope, talking to researchers and, network with other superintendents. That's one of the things that, I'm pretty proud of myself. I have, if there was a problem or something I don't know, and you never know it all, I have no problem networking and trying to stay current because everything's changing. It changed. I mean, I just look at the last, 5 years with AI. I mean, I'm starting to use that a little bit, and then you look at like the GS3 ball. I mean, that kind of stuff is, I just think, really important. I mean, we use it every day. And then the data collection, like clipping yields, we do clipping yields every day. We do moisture at the 1.5 inch, and then also 8 inches, because on these courses we have USGA greens, and then all the other different parameters. And quantitatively, like if you vent a green, how long will it take for you to get your firmness back? How does it affect smoothness? So we really have tangible ways to measure with some of this technology coming up. And like the clipping yield and all these different things in the moisture, we're always looking at the moisture. It's sort of what happens on the bottom. I grew up wrestling, football, and coaches always say, where the head goes, the body goes. Well, to me, where the bottom of the green goes on USGA green, the top's going to follow. So you start getting down to that under 5% on the 8-inch probes, you're basically not going to have capillary action coming back up, and you're a top-down watering procedure.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I've seen lately, I keep seeing, I don't know if it's just because of your algorithm on social media or whatever, are the words expect change. And I think it's so prevalent today with how the world works, is that everything's always changing. You can't just expect things are always going to be the same. And it's so true on a golf course, right? So I know you just dug into the GS3 a little bit and some of the data collection. One of the things I really wanted to ask you about today was your interest in autonomous mowing and where you think that's kind of going with the industry, pros and cons.
No, I think it's going to come. I mean, we're breaking bread with the range picker on the driver range, and something we need to toy with a little bit. But it's coming. To me, I wanted to make sure that we haven't got it yet. We're going to get one and use it on the driver range, because I think it's a perfect application. But then some of the things, I don't know how familiar you are with Merion, but we're extremely tight. We're like on 125 acres. So where do these things go to put them, when they go back to home base to charge and these other things? But there's definitely going to be applications for it, and we're just starting to get into that. I mean, some of the things I have a tendency of jumping into, right away, but this has been something I'm sort of been back and, waiting to see how it goes and talking to colleagues. And, there is definitely a place for it. We haven't entered into it, but I can tell you in 3-4 years, we will be using it in some capacity. I think the one thing I wish they could come up with is something for raking bunkers. We have 4.4 acres of bunkers, and it's 8 people every day, and our faces are very steep, and it's hard work with those guys raking bunkers, and such a design element of the golf courses. People refer to Merion and the white faces of Merion, and with the restoration that Gil did, I think we added 40% more bunkers. Bunkers that were taken out got put back in. Some got moved for distance and expanded. And when we went deep, we wanted to be deep. When you go deep, you got to go bigger. To make the slopes work out. That was so. And then that's what as far as autonomous mowers at this point.
Did you send Gil a nice thank you note for adding all those bunkers, all that square footage to your bunkers then?
It's funny. I had this position in the 90s, and Gil was the architect at the time. So Gil and I worked together, quite a bit, and then I left, and then some other things happened. But Jim Wagner, Jim, I consider Jim a great friend. I mean, we worked together at Wilmington. I mean, and when I left to come to Merion, Jim became the superintendent underneath the superintendent that got taken, so followed up on my father. So you have a good relationship with those guys, and they're so talented. I mean, I have quite a bit of construction experience, with all the years of Muirfield and what we did here with the restoration. And then, when I was at Muirfield, I also was lucky enough, I did 2 years working for Jack on the agronomy team and working with DA. So you get to see some really, really talented shapers. Jim Wagner is off the charts, and an excavator with a knuckler. I just, him looking at a picture of what the bunker was and he's shaping it. It's just to have that skill set, and, same with Gil and the visions that company has. And, I think one of the things I'm really proud of is I worked with, Gil, I've worked with the FASU organization, I've worked with the Nicholas Design, and obviously Jack, and all the DAs, and, I had a good relationship with all those. To me, it's about carrying out their vision and what they want for the golf course, and then executing it, and then talking about sustainability. There's, sometimes you want to get a little creative on the design side, but if it's not something that's practical to be maintained, it's not sustainable. And so you have to have those conversations. But, I think in the 2 years I was doing the job at Muirfield and doing the Nicholas Design deal, I learned a lot doing that, and John Scott, who's since passed, was, I learned a ton from Mr. Scott. He was, that guy could write emails like no one ever seen. Like I would take an hour to write like, a page, and 5 minutes later, he's got 5 pages written back. So I don't have that skill being able to write as fast as what John was, but, he was a very brilliant agronomic mind.
Now with Chat GPT, you can write 5-page email in about 30 seconds. So it's
no kidding.
You mentioned a couple of different golf courses, Paul, a couple of different places that you've been. I'm really kind of curious on some of the considerations that you thought about when thinking of taking that leap to another golf course. What are the things that really kind of were in your mind as you were considering making changes?
Well, once again, I wouldn't be the person I was without my father's influence. So the places I worked, when he's told me you need to go work someplace, I didn't even question it. He's like, you need to go work for Mr. Bader, and work for him in 85. And it was a little rough summer. I'm 19 years old, and, I didn't know what I didn't know. I was a hard worker, and, I think he put me on greens, and when he left, I had his greens route. So I thought that was pretty flattering. But there was times he'd come in and say, if you have any respect for your father, you get out of the business. You're a damn disgrace. And I heard that. I heard that probably, if I heard it once, I heard it 10 times. And, it helps you to grow thick skin, and it was I never took anything personal because he wanted me to be better. It was more about the message. And to this day, I owe him a hell of a lot because he's helped me out my career. And then I think it starts with the foundation. So the foundation is working for really good people. And I think it's important that you diversify and see different geographical areas. So after I worked for Mr. Bader, I spent 2 summers working for Mr. Stone. And once again, he could have been professor. Makes you really got me thinking in the agronomics of why things are and all the test plots. And then knowing I wanted to know a little bit about construction, my next summer I worked for Tanto Irrigation, and we were building we were following a course, a Reese Jones course in Charleston, South Carolina. So I learned a lot about golf course construction. And then when I got done with the 4-year program, went to work at Augusta National. That was brief. That was very brief. I think I was only there 3 months, and my dad decided at that time to go back to Wilmington for personal reasons. His parents were getting sick, and so I went up before, and wasn't even an assistant. I was on the staff. But leadership and people have never been an issue. You lead by example, and you have people follow. But I was lucky enough that Greg James was there. And, like stuff that you take for granted, like you have to order stone. I never ordered stone. I never did a PO. And it's like, we dumbass. Here, go to the Rolodex, look for stone, order the damn stone, and do the PO. So like Greg, as far as like there's so many people that help you out through your career. Greg is one of my best friends, and I've been in a few of his weddings. So, but it was funny. The second one, I was the best man, and the last one, he basically says, "Hey, you're in the wedding, but I got to change the batting order up." So that
Didn't work last time. We're gonna have to switch things up a little bit.
So I guess you start with the foundation, and obviously I was starting to look for opportunities, and getting the job at Merion at the age of 26. That doesn't happen. I mean, I had the tutelage, I had the background, but I had Mr. Bader on my side because I worked for him, and he decided he was going to get out of the business, and I was on a short list. And then obviously, clubs aren't stupid. They know they're hiring a young guy. They know my dad at that time was at Wilmington, and if I had problems, they said you're getting two for a price of one. Even though my dad the first year really didn't come up, he wanted me. He knew I could do it on my own. So. So we, all the years at Merion, I mean, I love the place. I love the opportunity, but I wanted tournaments. I mean, it was my passion. So we just finished up the girls junior in '98, and we had a good showing. I mean, the golf course was good, made a lot of improvements, and we just got told that we were not going to get an open because of logistics. I mean, and obviously we are tight, and since that time, there's been real estate that's been purchased. And I just like, I got to do, I wanted, it was my driving factor in my career. And interviewed at Oak Hill. They had the 2003 PGA Championship. And I always tell guys, the more screwed up a golf course is, the better the opportunity is. And it was bad. I mean, infrastructure issues. I mean, like drainage issues. Like, we spent $1 million putting drainage, 30-inch pipe through the golf course. And then obviously working with the Fazio group, we rebuilt bunkers and rebuilt, added length and everything else. And it had a really good showing, so for me, that was a really great opportunity because number one, it was a major championship. Number two, there was a lot of room for improvement. And, I was lucky when I got there. Jeff Corcoran, which is another one of my really good friends. You always, people always say I learned a lot from you. I think I learned just as much from Jeff as he learned from me. And our personalities are very much the same. We're pretty driven people, pretty focused, very focused. And, so I had the opportunity to work with him. And then when I left, he had gone back to Boston. He took over for me. So, and, obviously he did a phenomenal job. But funny story was, my wife loved Rochester. My kids loved Rochester. It's a great community. I hated it. I mean, I hated it. I mean, not anything to do with the people. I couldn't stand the winters. I mean, there'd be times from Thanksgiving to like March, you don't see grass. I remember the first winter, I think it was one of the snowiest winters in history of January. So I'm trying to walk the golf course in knee deep snow. I'm like, this isn't going to work. I'm going to have a heart attack, for Christ's sakes. So, we had a good showing, and my dad contacted me, and we were out to dinner with my wife on Sunday night. And I said, Ann Louise, I said, I've got a feeling it's time to bug out. Just time to go. I need another chapter. And got the opportunity to interview at Muirfield. And that was a pretty, you talk about all interviews are stressful. I don't care who you are, they're stressful. And talking to Mr. Nicholas or Jack, and I'm like, well, let me look at planes to get out there. He's like, no. He goes, we're going to send a plane for you. Plane. I mean, at that point, I don't even think I flew first class in my life, let alone planes had for you. I'm like, geez, oh, Pete. So, get on the plane and like you're just in awe. Like you're on a private plane and you get dropped off and he picks you up, and it was probably one of the best interviews I ever had because it was focused on the way. But you get off the plane, like you don't know if you should ask for his autograph because growing up, Jack was the guy that I always rooted for. I was a big Jack fan, even though growing up in Pittsburgh, a lot of people were Palmer fans. I was more of a Jack fan. And the whole interview was on the golf course, and that's where I'm the best. I mean, you put me in a room, in a boardroom, and that's not my strength. Like, get me on the golf course. Let's talk agronomics. Let's talk about what we need to do and everything else. So that to me was a no-brainer. Columbus is Brian, Ohio in that area. I mean, it's a great place to raise kids.
Yeah.
And it's a great organization. And you have a tournament every year, and you always got to do construction. I gravitate to the construction, love it. The more we can build, and working with Jack one-on-one with what he wanted and bringing a shaper and execute it, and that kind of thing was always really special. Very fond memories there. And Chad, what he's done there is absolutely off the charts. I mean, and that's the thing, you leave a place and you put your heart and soul on it, you want to see it to continue to progress, and because you care about it. And that's what I look at what Jeff did at Oak Hill, progressing the golf course and making it better. I look at what Chad's doing at Muirfield. It's fantastic. And that's what you want. You want to see progression because you care about the organization. You want to see it continue to go in the right direction. All the places are going in the right direction. So, the next chapter coming back was, we're talking about, with some of the people from Merion and coming back. And at that point, I really wanted to rebuild the course at Muirfield, and I just couldn't get Jack to say yes. I mean, and it just was I didn't think it would happen. And Merion had this renovation, and, I've always liked Philly. I've always loved Merion. I think it's a special place. And I started thinking about, being able to renovate a golf course. And we're not talking, this was a nip and tuck. We rebuilt every aspect of the golf course. So to be able to do a whole renovation of an entire golf course, basically rebuild it, was something I always wanted to do. I had a great relationship with Gil, and then be able to come back and really finish my career where I started, and knowing that there's the Open in 30 and that come full circle. And I was very lucky to have the opportunity to come back. But, the other real big driver was my father. He's in Philly. My mom's been gone since 2004. And, at some point, you don't know how much longer you have with your parents. And it just, I had to do it for a lot of reasons, professionally and also personally. I get to see him. I don't get to see him as much as I'd like to, but we try to see each other and spend time. And so that was the main reason. But I think I always tell everyone, when you interview for a job, you want to make sure that what your strengths are and the direction the club is going the right way. And I also always told my guys, when you interview and you get that first job, it doesn't matter what you did in the past. If you don't succeed, rip up your resume and you're done. And the other thing not to babble a little bit, but the term I hate the most is I paid my dues. I think that's total bullshit. You pay your dues every damn day. If you're coming to like Merion Golf Club or, Oak Hill or Muirfield, they expect excellence. You've got, like our tee sheet today, I think we've got 150 people on the tee sheet. Well, it's one member and 3 guests. Every day is a member guest. And these are people from all over the world. And it's a historic, phenomenal golf course, and the conditioning has to match the architecture and the experience. So I think you pay your dues every day, and probably why I'm not the one to be talking about work-life balance, but I still love what I do. That's the thing. And, there is no such thing as a perfect golf course. I've had some good ones, but I've never had a perfect one.
Afternoon from Grass Clippings. I'm Scotty Hebert, Director of Agronomy.
Roberto Hernandez, Superintendent.
We're out here doing our driving range conversion project for the summer. We got about 54 irrigation heads to replace, run a bunch of communication wire, beat up the soil, mitigate it, top dress it, try to get some nutrients in this caliche, and get it ready for sprigs in about 3 weeks. So big thanks to the Superintendent Network and Turf Today for supporting us. You guys have been amazing, and love that you're sharing our story and our journey and all the others of the greenskeepers out there in the world. So look forward to having you all out next season and showing what we've done with the place. Take care.
Oh, a little update on the show here for everybody. Dr. Ben Pease is no longer with us. He has moved up and on and is doing something different now. We wish him all the best and thank him so much for all his insight. He has been great in really getting this segment going, creating a lot of buzz right now, different questions coming in. So we have somebody who has filled the role and is able to take this on. I think you guys are going to love him. This is Tony Goldsby.
Yeah, so my name's Tony Goldsby. Obviously, been with the Andersons since 2018. Came over to the business as the group's pro agronomist and spent about 2 years, obviously working on product development and conducting in-field research trials for all of our different products that we've been using. So it was an exciting, time. We were able to launch some pretty cool products during that stretch there, like our Genesis 575, and then also our biochar and humic containing product called Charex. So, being on the front end of some of those flagship products for us was a super fun part of the business. But unfortunately for me, I've always struggled to, decide whether I wanted to fully be in the, research and development side or I wanted to be on the business side of it. So when I got the opportunity in 2020 to kind of step back into sales director role, segued over into that part of the business a little bit. And that's kind of where I've been since then. But again, love the hat of being able to sit on both sides of the table and, work from products from the point of conceptualization with, customers out in the field and figuring out, how we can help, find a solution for the problem that they're working with, all the way to the end use and, product life cycle and how do we make sure that we're, keeping these products out in the market as long as they're applicable and coming up with the next new variations that we can wherever we can. So I always joke that I don't know exactly what I'm going to be when I grow up, but I'm certain it's going to be in the turf grass or the green industry. So, other than that, we just take it day by day, and I certainly enjoy the variable nature of our job and just how our customers and clients are always, presenting some sort of new challenge for us to come after.
We are back with another Ask the Agronomist segment featuring PhD agronomist Tony Goldsby from the Andersons. Today's question comes in from Sinatra 315. Out of all the diseases, which one would you prefer to treat versus the others, and why?
Well, great question. And first off, I should really confess that by training, I'm actually an ecologist and not a plant pathologist. So my first instinct would be to say I prefer no disease if possible. And I like my turf as green and healthy as possible with zero signs of any dying. So, but in all seriousness, the diseases that I do find most satisfying to help customers with are typically those that are, very environmentally driven ones that hit low cut turf specifically hard. And some of those that I think about that kind of fall into that category are things like gray or pink snow mold. And those specific pathogens are just really tough to deal with for a superintendent because, they're very specific to the areas they thrive in. You typically find them in the parts of the United States where you're going to have 100+ consecutive snow days in those northern climates. And at that point, you're not really walking and scouting fairways and or greens like you would typically do for something like dollar spot, but you're really relying on making one key strategic application of an active ingredient in the fall to make sure you're getting ahead of that pathogen. And then you're kind of just crossing your fingers until you get that spring thaw to hope that your preventative fungicide program work through to help the pathogen development from occurring. And I think from my perspective, that's really what makes it most rewarding is, again, if done right and done preventatively, it really does work. And if you use the right active ingredients, in the fall months, whether it's a split or single application, and you're really making sure to do the best that you can to manage that surface moisture of your putting green surface as you go into winter, we typically will see superintendents come out on the other side with clean and happy turf, which is obviously going to end up with a very happy superintendent. So given how demoralizing and how detrimental, pathogen like gray or pink snow mold can be to a putting surface, being able to help superintendents be able to find solutions like that is an agronomic challenge that certainly I love to help take on. And again, no disease is probably my favorite, but if I have to deal with one, I certainly want to help, customers come up with one that can be certainly very detrimental to their putting surfaces.
no disease is always the best disease. And certainly up here in Canada, we deal with a ton of snow cover. So every spring we always play, what did we miss? Because the snow mold will show us exactly what we missed. And, not every spray application will do that. So that's a good answer. Thank you so much, Tony. It's great to have you on the show for your first episode. This wraps up another Ask the Agronomist segment featuring Dr. Tony Goldsby from the Andersons.
Hey, Adam and Brian and Turf Today. Congrats on 100 episodes. I look forward to tuning in and listening to many more.
You mentioned every day's a member guest. I'll have to sidebar with you later. I've got a buddy from this area coming to play all weekend, so you have to send your guys out to mess with him a little bit or something when he's out there.
Nice.
Okay.
So you mentioned you got your first job. You took over Merion when you were 26, 27 years old. What do you remember about that first year? Were you just absolutely terrified, or did you have that confidence in you that, like, I know I can get this done?
I was scared. I mean, because it's the great opportunity, and the funny thing is Bill Kittleman, the pro that was here for a long time, a legend. He used to smoke these Garcia Vegas cigars. So I remember, I see him smoking. I got one day and got through the day. I'm like, I didn't lose any grass and I didn't get fired. I smoked a cigar, but I knew I had the foundation. I knew I had the work ethic. Some of the things I struggled on was probably more the administrative side. Like the budgeting and hiring. I mean, I know how to hire and fire, but like the paperwork side, like there was, you have people to do that. So it was more probably on the administrative side. And then, if you're on the board of governors of a place like Merion Golf Club, you're very successful, very intelligent. And I remember I didn't go to all the board meetings like I do now, but the few ones I went to, I'm like, and my chairman at the time, Mr. Berrickman, great guy. He kept saying, Latshaw, you got to get your blinders off. You just got to get your blinders off. All you think about is agronomy, and you got to get your blinders off. And so, I have a 4-year degree from Penn State, and I went back and took the 2-year program in 1 year. But I'm like, for me to succeed, I need to get better at what I'm not good at, in the communications, the writings, and presentations. I'm still a work in progress. I'm not there. But so got this idea. Tommy Goslin, one of my assistants, was talking about grad school. And, he says, just jumping through hoops. And my wife at that time was thinking about going back to Temple for MBA and emphasis in taxation. So it's basically go 1 day a week, and then you do all this work, and then in the summer. But so her and I went back at the same time. And I went to Rosemont and get a master's in management, which I really think it helped me with like financial statements and analyzations and communications and presentations and that kind of stuff. But I can tell you, it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, because, I'm dyslexic. So every week we had to read a 300-page book, write a 12-page paper, and then give a presentation. That was it for like 2 years. So, Wednesday after night, try to get the book read by Saturday. A lot of nights in the office at 10 o'clock. And there's a few times like, I got a good job. I'm just going to drop this. I'm going to quit. I remember my wife saying, if you quit, you're a loser. Well, if you take all those personality tests, probably off the charts on being competitive, like the highest percentile you can be. Well, that really pissed me off. So then it got into grade point averages. And I can tell you right now, my wife is way smarter than me by a long shot. I'm a mucker and a grinder. My grade point average when we got done was like, I think I had an 3.86, and she had a 3.85. So every time she gives me shit about stuff like, whose grade point average was higher?
That's awesome. Well, we do talk a lot about school on here. We have a lot of people that are, looking to go to school or looking to further their education or their careers in the industry. What can you tell us about your advice for people looking to go to school or maybe thinking about just getting on the job training?
Well, if you're going to go I emphasize, get a minor in business, or management, because, like Dr. Dewich, when he went in the 2-year program, he drew this circle and he said, what percent of this circle is agronomics? People are like, I think I said 70%. Drew a sliver at 15%. The other is people. Because let's face it, my dad always emphasized this, what separates good superintendents from bad superintendent is productivity of your staff. Your biggest labor or your biggest number on your budget is always labor. So being able to maximize the amount of work done in a day and push hard is important. So that all starts with people. I mean, and some of the other training I've done through my life, besides my grad school, I think Gary Sweeta had training, and it was really profound. Two things I remember, and I tell myself every day: you get what you accept. And the other thing is, the house you live in, the car you drive, where your kids go to college is all related to your staff. Because it doesn't matter. You can be the most brilliant agronomic, the best whatever, but if you don't have a good staff and you don't develop your staff, you're not going to make it. I mean, maybe it's where it starts. It starts with people. People are the product, and so it all starts with staff development. And I've been pretty proud of a lot of where my guys have gone. I think I've always fostered an environment for them to have the ability to succeed, but they had to have two things: attitude and effort. You don't have attitude, you don't have effort, and you got to be persistent because shit goes wrong. I mean, I've killed more grass than probably anybody, and the highs and lows, and it's just you do it long enough, you're gonna have bad stuff happen, and be able to communicate through that. But you got to be persistent. So as far as 4-year, now, if you're, I think obviously I'm biased towards Penn State, but the 2-year program is a very good program. I took both, so I can talk about the pros and cons. I mean, the 2-year program is really, really geared towards being a golf course superintendent. So in some regards, if you had a 4-year degree in business and then you want to go back to a 2-year, I think that's a hell of a good combination. Rutgers has got good programs, but I think the biggest thing that's going to help everyone out is like the Penn State online program. I've had multiple guys that started off with the associate's degree, then went on to do the 4-year degree, and then some went on to do masters. And it gives them the ability to be working and potentially going to school. It's all about every journey starts with the first step. Start getting some education, and there's a lot of different ways to go. But I really like the combination of having a really good, strong science background, agronomic background. You got to understand soils, you got to understand those type of things, but then also the managerial side of it, which is extremely important.
You mentioned attitude and effort, something you're really looking for in the people you bring on board. How do you go about identifying that when you're in the interview process with a young individual?
I have a lot of weaknesses, but reading people and interviewing is probably one of my strengths. Everyone's got a T when they come in, either big T or little T for trouble. So I always like to ask them questions like, what was your relation? Who's the most influential person in your life? And just what their values are. I don't care if they don't have experience and everything else. It's more about what their value system is, where they see, what they want to do, and are they going to put the effort in? Everyone wants to be the superintendent of Augusta National or Merion or Pine Valley or wherever, but it takes a lot of dedication and perseverance and, and some sacrifice. So, you try to see the value system, and then, from there, it's their performance and how they do. You always say you got to start off and you got to do the entry level jobs well, and then the progression. And I emphasize that a lot. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've taught personally how to mow greens. So you're always teaching, you're always coaching. I mean, what superintendents do is a lot like college coaches. I mean, you're recruiting interns, you're bringing them in, you're trying to train them, and then hopefully if they don't want to stay, you try to guide them to where they should be. And I always tell them, like, just because maybe Philly's not your area or you don't want to continue here, I want to be a part of your development, because if you came here to do a good job and you were loyal to the organization and you tried your best, I want to make sure that I'm helping you guide and give you options of where I think you should go. Ultimately, it's your decision, and you try to guide a little bit. But once again, that comes back to the influential people in my life and how they help me out, like Dr. Dewich, my father, obviously, Mr. Bader, Mr. Stone, and all the other people. Basically, you're standing on other people's shoulders to get where you need to go, and you never want to let sight of how you got to where you were and the people that impacted you, and you need to get back.
So would you say it'd be hard to make it in this industry without having a good mentor?
I don't, it's like anything else, if you got the desire, you can still make it. But it always helps to have a course. And, I would tell guys when you're interviewing, all right, well, you're going someplace. Where do the last few or where do the last assistants get placed into organizations? If they're aligned with what your goal sets are, then fine. But if they're not, then maybe it's not the place for you. And also, listen, everyone's different. I mean, I've had, think about it, 5, 6 interns or even more for 30 years. I've had people come in at Muirfield and, you're that week, you're working 120 hours in a week's leading up. And then in the summer, like I would say, one thing I know is I want nothing to do with tournament golf. And that's fine. I mean, that's fine. It's good you identified that. Then you get guys like, Rich McIntosh, where, he has to do it. I mean, it's in his blood. I mean, he wouldn't take a job unless there was some sort of event there. I mean, so everyone's different, and I think it's what your priorities are, and there's no wrong or right. I mean, there's a lot of great organizations that treat their employees well and that are progressive. It's all about what the fit is, and then it's a little bit too, geographically. It's really difficult to get a job in the geographical area if you want to be there. It limits where you can go. So, but if you got a spouse, obviously that's very important to making sure that she's happy. And, I can tell you, my wife, I mean, there's been some rough moves. So coming back here might have been a little rough. So, but, you got to make sure they're taken care of. It's a little bit like, my dad's success and my success. My mother's been passed away, Phyllis Latshaw. She backed him in every aspect of what he did. Wasn't asking for 4th of July barbecues or anything like that. It was all about him succeeding and supporting him and his work ethic. And I think that came from the fact that she came from a dairy farm. We think we got to talk hard. I mean, as a kid, I would go to the farm, and milk cows and bale hay. That's a hard occupation. Them damn cows, they need milk 7 days a week. They don't care what day it is. So having her, and then I look at my wife, she's very supportive because her father started a business, and some of those hard things when you're starting a business, and can you make payroll? I mean, I remember, her going back to school one time. She's like, I don't think I'm going back. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, my parents might not be able to afford it because the business is struggling a little bit. So you have those people that have that type of background and support. It lets you focus on what you're doing. It's a little like Jack always said, reason why, he did so well in golf. I mean, obviously extremely talented and mentally probably the toughest person you've ever probably met in your life, but he would always refer back to Barbara. Barbara, he knew that she had his back and was taking care of the kids. And so, it's important to have all aspects to move on. So once again, I'm probably rambling here a little bit. I mean, I'm sure what the question was at this point.
No, that was a great perspective. I think you gave a lot of people a lot of inspiration by saying that, because there's a lot of unknown with our industry. And if you're just someone who starts at a golf course and you don't have a lot of people to lean on, or you don't have an association or something like that, it's tough to kind of know where to be guided to. And I thought that was a great breakdown, and it'll give a lot of people a lot of perspective.
It's amazing how many people through my career were in between things in life. Maybe going through college or graduated, didn't like their occupation, and they started working on a golf course, and then they get the bug. So I think that's the hardest thing with our industry. When the economy crashed, no one was going, we're closing more golf courses. It's a great way of making a living. We just need to continue to attract people to get into it. And, this obviously is going to be, it's going to have to be the right person. Like if you want to be in the basement playing Nintendo or whatever all these kids play nowadays, or you're the kid that plays sports and wants to be outside all the time, the Nintendo kid's probably not going to make it, so maybe that's a generalization, but you got to love the outside. And I think, when I interview people, you always ask if they have, that they're into sports, because usually sports carries over to this occupation, because let's face it, it's physical hard work.
5, 6 interns or whatever over 30 years. It's a lot of people running through there, not to mention the number of assistants you've had along the way. You still keep in touch with the majority of those guys?
I do, but I'm also bad. I lose touch of some of them. Like a perfect example is Jake Gargis at Crooked Stick. Him and I are both pretty much the same. We focus. The only, he knows his zip code where he works. I know my zip code where I'm at, and we won't talk for 6, 7 months, and then we'll talk for an hour and a half. There's a few people I talk to all the time, and it's just and I think it's something that I'm bad at. But you when you do talk to them, so obviously the guys that work for me, they sort of know my agronomic philosophies and how I do things, and probably a lot of those are probably the same principles, but different twists. So a lot of times you call them and they're doing things that I'm not done, or I might be doing things that they haven't done. Like a perfect example is Kyle Steidel, really I've had so many talented people, but Kyle's down the street at Cays Valley. He's like a son to me. All these guys are like sons to me, like Rich and Matt and Jake. I mean, you spend more time with these guys than you do your family at times. And so Kyle was telling me about this coral recycler, and we have a lot of similarities on properties. He's got sand top dress fairways. I've got sand top dress fairways. So he tried it on 3 holes, and he's like, Paul, it's completely changed the fairways. So I go down there, I see it and everything else, and I buy one, and we exchange back and forth. So that's something. It's phenomenal process if you have sand-based fairways, because it basically takes the sand and mixes and almost makes a homogeneous mix, and you're bringing some of the soil up. And so that was something I learned from him by just networking. And, we talk all the time, and just like mower setup. And so it's not just the people you worked with. You need to network with other people, because I don't care what golf course you go to visit, there's going to be 5 things they're doing and probably doing better than you're doing. And, power of observation and trying to take the things, it might be something small, it might be something big, and try to implement it into your programs.
Well, there was something else I wanted to ask you about. I was recently reading an article in GCI magazine where you were talking about texting versus calling. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I text, but I think emails are probably one of the worst things that's ever happened. I'll spend more time writing an email versus just pick up the phone and talk to the person. I think so much is lost in texting and even emails, where you don't know the tone and everything else. And if you could talk to somebody, on the phone, you can get a feel for them, or a Zoom meeting, or in person. I think the communication skills. I look at the young kids, and they'll text you and versus just talking to you at times. And it's not even like the remote; they might be on property. So I just think, listen, probably my communication skills are another work in progress. We all got things we got to work on, but I think texting is efficient at times. But if you've got something big, face-to-face conversation, or pick up the phone, because you can talk through things so much easier than doing this shit. And plus my finger, I was better on a BlackBerry. BlackBerries are gone.
I was too young. He doesn't know what a BlackBerry is.
I had a BlackBerry. That company was actually started in my hometown, which is wild.
Okay.
I'm bad at that too. It's easy. For me, I take the easy way out sometimes. And like, perfect example, Paul, I just texted you. I know you're busy. I send a text knowing that, look, you don't have to feel obligated to pick up my phone call right now. You can get back to my text whenever it fits your schedule. So that's definitely something I need to work on too. But
but I think for the big stuff, face-to-face is a hell of a lot more important and more critical than the texting.
Yeah. So face-to-face, you mentioned getting out and visiting these people. How important is it for you to go to things like I just saw you last week at the US Open? I see different things around the country from time to time. How important is that for you to get out and be a part of and show support to those other superintendents around the country?
Well, first and foremost, Mike McCormick and that staff, what they did at the Open is off the charts. I mean, those guys should be elated with their performance, the attitude, the effort that they put, the adversity with the weather. It was probably one of the best conditioned golf courses I've ever seen. So kudos to those guys. And that's why you go to those places. You see things. Just because I've been in the business a long time, you've got to be progressive. You got to move forward. I keep coming back to my dad. I mean, he was always cutting edge, and you always want to see what people are doing with different perspectives and try to potentially incorporate them in there. You know, the worst thing is doing the same program. So going there was unbelievable. Obviously, I love that. It's probably my favorite golf course. I mean, I grew up there. I love it. You know, Merion's my probably second favorite, but you know, it's just I love that property and just the memories I have with working there and working with my dad and the people I worked with there. So, you know, you need to do more of it. And I must admit, at times I'm guilty. You know, just not going to other golf courses as much because every time you go someplace, you're going to learn. And it's also it's good networking to see different people and people we haven't seen for a while. Like, you know, when I was back there, like all those people, I've been friends with them forever and colleagues, and you just get to catch up and talk about, it doesn't have to be grass, you know, how's your family doing? You know, oh my God, you got a kid this old, or, you know, it's just those type of things, you know, the human relationship side of the business, which you think about this business, there's no other industry like this where you call somebody, they'll give you information, they'll help you. They're not trying to throw you in the butt. There's no other industry like this. I mean, the camaraderie and the commonality of everyone living the diversity of weather and the challenges of maintaining golf courses, but the end goal is trying to, you know, have the best playing conditions you possibly can. And just being able to call anyone, or somebody calls me, I'll share any information. Because, and that, you know, I just can't think of other industries that are like that. You know, maybe chefs do it. I don't know. Maybe they just watch Gordon Ramsay and pick up what he's doing on Hell's Kitchen or something. But
do you have any idea what might have influenced that? Like where that might have started, or group of people or organization or something like that, that really would have drawn it all together and made everybody kind of, you know, want to push the wheel in the same direction?
You know, obviously the Valentines had, I mean, huge impact on this organization. And Joe was the one who really started a lot of these different things and, you know, the conferences and stuff. So I think it's been something that's been going on for a while, and it's just something that's sort of carried through, but it starts with, you know, meetings and GIS conferences and regional conferences. And then, you know, there's always people. I remember there was a superintendent that came to visit me at Muirfield, and he liked golf, and I think he had three of his former assistants that were superintendents, and they would go every year to a geographical area and play golf and then spend time on the golf course. So you think about the camaraderie and just think about how educational that was to see the different courses and the different operations. You know, sometimes I'll never forget, you know, Jeff Corcoran, you know, like I said, we're really good friends. We went to go visit his brother, and he was a superintendent in upstate New York on the Finger Lakes, and it was a 9-hole course. I think it was a 9-hole course. He told me what his budget was. I mean, the guy was a mechanic, was irrigation tech. I mean, he did all. I'm thinking, I spend this in 2 months, what he spends in a year. So you go to a place like that, and the creativity. Sometimes those guys are the most talented, and you know, they're doing mowers, they're doing irrigation. I mean, they're doing everything. I mean, it's been a long time since I set a mower. I can tell you that. I understand the concepts, but I guess if I want a good quality cut, Robert will keep me out of the shop because I'll probably screw it up now. But it's been a long time. So, you know, every place you go, you have an opportunity. It's like also, I always tell guys that when they come in, there is so much knowledge in this room. I equate that back to the 2-year program. It took it 1 year. You talk to the different guys from different geographical areas and how they did things. Everyone has something to offer, some knowledge base you can bring with you. And that's what you encourage these other guys when we do the interns and stuff. And we have a very good intern program, but ask questions, exchange ideas. You know, what's your professor saying on this pathogen or chemistry or stuff like that? So it's all, you never know it all. The most effective people are the ones that know how to get the answer. Then you get into, the older I get, I mean, everything is risk reward. You know, what is the risk of this going wrong and what is the reward? When I was younger, I didn't have that thought process. It was, we're going, you know, and I killed a lot of grass probably too. So.
Oh, hey, how you doing? Michael Bowman, Standard Golf Company. Congratulations on 100 episodes. You know, that's 99 episodes more than my local superintendent's podcast, Growing Grass with Gary. It may sound like a great podcast, but it was just him yelling at dollar spots and dandelions all day. You know what goes good with Turf Today podcast? Some Standard Golf products. We have your beautiful custom-made flags. Hopefully they're not stolen. We have your maintenance tools, and we have your tee markers. Hopefully they're not stolen too. We basically have everything you need for your golf course. Cue divot fixing ASMR. So whether you're cutting stripes on a green, oh yeah, I did that, or you're cleaning up geese turds, I hope that you find time to listen to Turf Today's podcast. So with being a proud sponsor of the Turf Today podcast, let's raise our glass, fiberglass rod, to Turf Today's 100th episode. Congrats, guys.
As you look back on your career, Paul, are there any regrets or anything that you look back on that you wish you would have done differently?
I would say the biggest disappointment was 2013 in the President's Cup. We planned 5 years for that. We did 2 tournaments in 1 year, and the President's Cup's a pretty big event. We had a hurricane come up, and I think we had 5 inches of rain, 200% above a normal atmospheric moisture. And, I had in my mind, it was like, we're going to have firm fast, we're going to have firm fast, we're going to have firm fast. And it was just a quagmire. So I look back and, it's nothing you could do about it, but I had a paradigm in my head how it was going to be. And I still to this day, I don't have any President Cup logos anywhere. And it's funny, I talked to Rich and he said he got rid of all his too. It's just like, I think I'm scarred from that a little bit, because you work so damn hard to show off the golf course at a time where, I think October was the second driest month of the year historically in Columbus, and have that type of thing. But then, I remember I was pretty down, and Jack said to me, sometimes, adversity like this really shows, what you did. And he's like, we're destroyed outside the ropes. You did great, but remember, we got a tournament in the spring, so giddy up.
I remember that year. You're right, man. It was miserable. I mean, the moisture that came down. Was it true? Were you guys out spreading grass seed and stuff in the outside the ropes area to get it trampled in?
We've done that a few times. To be honest with you, I don't remember if we did it that one. I know the one Saturday, I think we prepped the golf course 3 times. And then on Sunday, we had basically a team on every green of like 3-4 people with squeegees and blowers. And then when the last group went through, they would rotate to the front. I mean, and we got lucky. We got it in. I didn't think we were going to get it in. And as soon as the United States won, they're like, this reward, the awards banquet needs to go inside. And we got dumped on again. And at that point, if we didn't finish, I don't think we were going to be playing golf. I mean, it was like no moss. So it was like being waterboard for 7 days.
So we would not be doing our jobs properly here if we didn't at least ask you a quick question about Augusta, because I know you said you were only there for 3 months. Any memories or anything special about there that you tell people about, or anything that's kind of close to your heart from being there?
I graduated in the fall, and I started there in January, and I was not there very long. But I can tell you things I remember a lot. Like there's always an assistant in someone's career that you're like, he's who I want to mentor. He's who I want to be. And it was Brad Owens. I mean, Brad to me was a total package. Great communicator, unbelievably hard worker, talented. And, so I remember that. And then the other thing I think that's sort of funny, because actually the year before when I was doing irrigation with Tanto, we caught up to construction. So we actually went to Augusta and we're installing, some irrigation lines. And I think that what would be surprising is if people saw what that golf course looked like in the summer. I'm not saying anything bad, but you got Bermuda grass, and you don't have the overseed ride. The azaleas aren't blooming, and it's a little bit different in the summer. But I would say that now I would think there is one story. This is a good one. So I volunteered every time I was in college, and undergrad, I did all right, but I, was young and liked to have a good time and stuff, and mowing greens and not getting any grass off greens. I can barely see. And Dr. Dewich was a consultant, and him and my dad were talking. He said, well, how's Paul doing in school? I had a 5 credit weed ID and herbicide class. And he told my dad basically, apparently Paul would be doing better, but he's missing a lot of Thursdays. Well, anyone's done tournaments and you're in the big boy seat, there's something called displaced aggression. And I got every barrel on that about, you missing school and, you could be doing better. And, it was fun. But the problem was on Wednesday night, there was dollar pitcher night at the Shantygaff. And this class was at 8 o'clock in the morning. And the Shantygaff was probably my kryptonite. So, so I think I look at that, and it's funny because I've done the same thing, probably even to my boys when they worked for me at Mirafield. Another thing, it was just, I was obviously in the wrong. I should have not been missing classes, but I think someone going to college, was having a little bit of a good time. So
we call that personal development.
Yeah. I was networking.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. You mentioned the volunteers. How have you seen the volunteer programs grow over the years? I know that was something you really implemented here and has taken off recently. Talk about the evolution of the volunteer program during tournaments.
I mean, that really started with my dad. I mean, I think he started some of the first volunteer programs, and I'm sure there's others that were doing it, but I encourage everyone. I mean, I think this year, there's 7 tournaments we're sending either an intern, an AIT, or somebody to. I think it's really critical for the self-development of people to be able to see things. The networking with the other people and the camaraderie, it's unbelievable. And I can tell you, there's been so many times without the volunteers and the tournaments I've had that we wouldn't have finished. I mean, President's Cup was number 1, and I went back and forth about the numbers I thought we'd have to have, and thank God I didn't back off. I mean, we wouldn't have been playing golf if we didn't have all these people. Actually, Curtis Cup here in 2022 on Sunday when we get destroyed with rain to get the golf course playable, and then you think about. I remember when I introduced the volunteer program at Merifield. They never did volunteers before that, and finance guy. Numbers guy, money, I'm like, well, we need rooms, we need this apparel and everything else. And he's like, I don't really, why do we need to do this? And I'm like, John, tell me where you're going to get somebody to come and work potentially 100 hours a week. And all you got to do is give them some shirts, give them a place to stay, give them decent food, and they'll do anything for it. And we'll make sure we finish when we need to finish. So it's critical. Because if weather's good, everything can be fine. It's a bad weather, and then let's face it, there's a great article in the USGA, I think, on the green section about tournaments and everything else. I mean, you're doing everything to a higher level. You're doing everything quicker. So you need those extra people. You need the support from the volunteers. You also need additional equipment. But I just think it's an experience that if you're serious about it, get in the business, you need to be exposed to it. It's hard work, but it's something that you'll remember for the rest of your life. If you were mowing the 18th green at Oakmont or Muirfield, tournament and contribute. I always told the guys coming in, different roles, similar goals. The goals is excellence. The goals is perfection. So it doesn't matter if you're raking bunkers or if you're mowing greens or you're prepping. Every little detail contributes to the success of that event. And you look at it's funny because David and JT, they're in sales and how many times David remembered somebody he volunteered with when he was 15 mowing greens, and same with JT. And let's face it, this is a tight knit organization and occupation. I mean, it really comes all around. So a lot of times you go to these events and you might be friends with those people forever. So, and a lot of times they gave people, a standout volunteer and a position comes open, I've hired outside, because of their performance, what they did, like a Jared Waite. Jared volunteered 3 times for the Memorial, and also the President's Cup was a stand-up. And I had an opportunity, and so it gives you exposure, and also it gives you exposure to other superintendents and also other organizations, especially if you're doing a tour event every year. I can't tell you how many people from Muirfield got jobs because of the relationship with the tour, because they saw what they were doing. They saw the performance. They're like, this guy's a rock star. Like Scotty Pavalko, he was handpicked to go to Cog Hill. Rich was sort of handpicked to go to Torrey. And it was, the interview process took place over the performance and all the conditioning and the week and everything leading up to it. And the other thing too, it's becoming more vogue, and we're going to try to do is volunteering advance week. I actually think that is actually more beneficial because you don't have the downtime, and you're seeing things leading up to the event. So, and that's also critical for the organization, because, the staff is working crazy hours, and you get these people coming in advance week. And, like Jeff would, always send me guys for advance week, and other people would send people for advance week. So it's a little bit more intimate, I would say. You might get more FaceTime with the management team, because, obviously, when you're doing an event, you're pulled in a lot of different directions. You're under stress. I mean, at least I was always under stress. Well, I'm under stress all the time for whatever reason. And you get a little bit more of a feel for it. But, the funny thing is, and if you have an opportunity to work like a place like a Muirfield, or like, event coming up that's having something, you go there and you're like, oh, these tents are all up, and this is here and this is there. They don't realize how much of a pain in the ass some of that stuff can be. Step by step, you're trying to get something built, and it's wet, and you got to plywood them in, and that type of stuff. People just show up at these events and, oh, well, this is nice. They don't realize all the steps and the angst that potentially can go into it. My advice always to a person that was doing a tournament for a first time, like, don't get hung up outside the ropes. Let somebody else do that. Well, I didn't listen to that advice in 2013 because I was losing my mind every day, because we had different people doing it. It wasn't the typical people from Memorial, and they were used to, like, I'm going to drive this forklift where I want. And it was I had a few out of body experiences that leading up to that event.
When did you pick up hockey as a little bit of a release for you?
Well, boys, when we moved to Rochester, the neighbors down the street were from Canada. Remarkable people, the Marauders. They went to Princeton, and he played goalie, and she was like an unbelievable hockey player, and also an unbelievable soccer player. And they had 5 kids. So the middle son was the same age as David, and then Riley was the same age as JT, my son. And they actually had a rink outside. Well, they started again, so the kids started getting into hockey, and I love hockey. I never played, but I loved. I had, at one point when I was here the first time, I had season tickets to the Flyers, and I split them 4 ways to be able to go to some games. So you go to the rink, and then Thomas Creek had this thing, learn to play. So, and I never skated in my damn life. I buy all this stuff, and this is a true story. So you do 45 minutes of playing, and then 45 minutes of scrimmaging. I bite it, like my feet are in the air. I land on my back, throw my back out, and that was the week of verification. I think I missed 3 days. And Bailey, I don't know if you guys know Tom Bailey. He was working for me in Oak Hill. He was like, Paul, that was the best verification I ever had. You weren't here. We're stirring shit up. So anyhow, I kept playing. I went to clinics with like little kids, like skating clinics. I remember one time, like, I caught an edge, hit the ice, and I'm looking out the left side of my ear hole of the helmet, and a little kid comes up to us, a hockey stop. Do you want me to get your mommy? So I go to clinics on Saturdays and Sundays, and I kept playing and playing and playing, and I'm not good. I became somewhat respectable, but I remember the one thing that really helped me is Ohio State had a camp between Christmas and New Year's. I think it was like 30 hours of ice, which is a lot of ice time. And I could never turn to the one side. And this guy kept working with it. All of a sudden I got it. And Lucas, one of my former assistants that's in Connecticut, we were on the same team. And first came back, I go left heart, I deke right, I go by the guy, and then typical thing, I shot the puck right in the goalie's gut. And he's like, where the hell did that come from? You never had that kind of stuff. So I actually played, probably late 40, I think it was 49, 50. I was playing with 20-year-old kids, and I got by a guy, and I got taken out, and I separated my shoulder, and I'm like, at some point, so I just stopped playing. There's times I think about lacing it up again, but I worked really, really, really hard to be a bad beer league hockey player. How to put that energy into golf? I might have been a hell of a lot better I am now, but I mean, I mean, especially in the winters, I mean, I would be skating 2, 3 times a week and always doing clinics and signing up for learn to plays. And I mean, it's a great sport. And I think that one thing, now I'm really on tangent, but you asked the question. When you look at athletes, football, wrestling, I actually played rugby for Penn State for like 2 semesters. I think hockey players are like the best athletes. I mean, you could spend your whole life trying to skate, and you go to a professional game and the transitions and how they skate. I mean, it's mind-boggling. And then the eye-hand coordination, what they do. I mean, I had hands of cement. I mean, terrible hands. My youngest son had unbelievable hands, and my oldest son was a really good player. But I think it's just a very, very tough game. And then the cardiovascular side, I mean, people think I'm going to do a 45-minute shift, and I'm pretty good shape at that. Back then, I ran a lot and always went to the gym. 45 seconds, if you're going, you're sucking wind. And then, obviously this was a non-checking league, even though sometimes I couldn't stop real well and I hit somebody. So
that was the excuse.
Yeah, that was the excuse. So yeah, I remember I took a guy out on our goalie. We were wearing white jerseys. I hit this guy so hard, to stick one up in the air. And the guy's like, "White wins." And I really couldn't. And I was like, I couldn't stop. I couldn't get by. I'm like, all right, well, game on, man. We're gonna go.
Going right through him.
Well, Adam's, I don't know if you caught it in any of the episodes you listened to. Adam's a former professional hockey player, professional goalie. Yeah. So he's one of those elite athletes.
Yeah.
Well, kudos to you. I mean, when did you start skating?
I was very young, very young. I remember my parents put me into skating, and I just had like a bike helmet on or a hockey helmet on, and I fell my first day and busted everything up in my face and stuff. So my next day out, I was with a cage and wheeling around. And yeah, no, it's been a part of. I live in Canada, right? So it's part of our culture up here and everything. And our shop, our turf crew is primarily hockey players. I think we're probably 95% hockey players. So being in the shop or being on the golf course or having meetings and talking, it just goes so easy. You talked about having athletes on your staff and looking for those types of people, and having a whole crew of hockey players working on the golf course makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of camaraderie. It's a great sport. I really, I mean, it just wasn't something I was exposed to. I wish I would have played hockey over anything else. I mean, I love football, loved wrestling, but I think, I just loved every aspect of it. You just can't start at the age of 30 and think you're going to be any good.
It keeps the expectations low. That's okay. That's okay.
Yep.
Well, you've been very generous with your time here, Paul. We appreciate you coming on here. Before we let you go, is there anything that you want to talk about to your episode here? We'll give you the floor if there's anything you want to throw out there.
The importance of really taking care of yourself with skin cancer. Wearing hats, wearing sleeves. I've had Mohs surgery, but it's not about me. My dad's going through it right now, so it's an occupational hazard. Wear sunscreen, wear hats, and yeah. Sorry about that. It's just he got diagnosed with cancer again, and it's he's in a battle.
Yeah,
that's all I have.
Like I said, we're thinking about you, wishing your dad all the best and the family. Obviously, that's something that no one goes through by themselves. It takes a big team support system around you to go through something like that. And we're rooting for you guys. And obviously, if there's anything we can do from afar to help, don't ever hesitate to reach out. So, but Paul, this has been fantastic chatting with you. Like I think I told you when I initially reached out, this is our 100th episode, so couldn't have asked for a better guest, better conversation. This has been fantastic. So thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you. It's an honor to be asked to do this, and I really appreciate the opportunity. And you guys, wish you the best of luck, and thank you for the opportunity to do this. Very honored.
Oh, thank you, Paul. And you mentioned before about your dad being Michael Jordan. I don't think there's anybody out there that's gonna argue that one. You know, he's been an inspiration to a lot of people, and not only us, but our entire community is kind of behind you guys right now. And wishing you the best. I want to thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure getting to talk to you. I think this is going to be an amazing episode. And if you want us to send you the episode before we put it out, we can certainly do that as well.
No, I think it should be fun, but you can send it to me. I mean, I was just being myself. So,
Yeah. No, I
and
thought you
That's
did
what
a
we
great
that's what
job.
we love about this show.
Mhm.
We get people on here that just, get to be themselves. It's great. Casual conversation.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Awesome.
Well, thank you so
We'll
much,
let you
Paul.
go, Paul. Yeah,
Okay,
we'll
thanks.
talk to you soon.
Okay. Have a great day.
All right. You too.
Take care.
We'll see you.
Hey, Adam, John Lamoureux here. Congrats on the first 100 episodes of Turf Today.
Wow, huh?
So good. He did that to me again where I'm like, I'm supposed to be thinking about questions, but I'm just hung up on what he's saying.
I know. It was like Scott when Scott was talking.
Yeah. And then he stopped
Just
talking. It
go.
was just silence. And we're both like,
I know. Well, the one time he said he was talking, I think you asked him the mentor question, and he just, he went with it. And it was phenomenal. And he finished it up with, I forgot what the question was, but I'm like, so did I. That was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever you just said was amazing. Appreciate that. That was great. He's obviously been a mentor to many, many, many people over the years, and his dad obviously as well. An absolute icon. Hopefully will be the first superintendent ever inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame. Still waiting on that. But yeah, I mean, just to be able to listen to him and listen to his thoughts on the industry and people and all that kind of stuff. Just what an absolute treat. And Paul was one of the first people that had me come out and document the event. So I think when I was working at the Ohio Turfgrass Foundation, literally just picked up a camera and started doing some video stuff, trying to learn what I was doing and figure out how to use a camera. He asked me to come out and just kind of do some documentation of the team. So it was my first introduction to really documenting any sort of tournament coverage. He gave me that opportunity. So it was really special of him to do that. And like I said, the intimidation factor when you hear a name like Paul Latshaw, it's like, but again, as we heard here, just an incredibly driven, humble individual that has, done amazing things for the people of this industry.
Yeah, he's got a great, I guess you call it great resume, and he's done a lot in his career, but at the same time, he's also touched so many different people, and you can see how he's very humble, very well-rounded. He's obviously worked on learning different things about himself and about the golf course and about his industry, and we know being a dad, being a leader of a family, and all that kind of stuff goes into it. So it was really cool to get to hear his story, and yeah, just a regular guy who's done a lot for the industry. And I think I read today he's been a superintendent for 33 years. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So he might have more experience than anybody right now, especially if he had started at the golf course when he was 4 years old.
Yeah, he's been around it his entire life. Obviously, he's seen some things, and I meant to ask him how many tournaments he's been a part of between, obviously the number of championships his dad's hosted and himself. Yeah, I can't imagine how many tournaments he's been a part of. It's a big number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was talking too about how much support there is in the industry, and I do wonder how far back that goes. I wonder how much influence his dad had on that, because it does seem like he's one of those guys that really tries to network and teach and help and move it around. So I'm sure there's people before him, but I want to say his dad has had a lot of influence on how well we treat each other and how well we support each other.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of that, I think, obviously goes back to the days of Colonel John Morley founding the GCSAA, bringing a group of guys together to essentially chat. But Mr. Latshaw, Paul's father, certainly took it to a whole nother level. Took the professionalism of this industry, in my opinion, to a whole nother level. And like you said, the whole networking thing, the advancing other people, making that a priority. I think he was highly influential in that. It's you hear about it in this industry all the time, the Latshaw tree, right? And the number of people, the number of branches that spawn off that tree, I don't even know where you would start to count the number of people that have been impacted by the Latshaw family. It's just that's a documentary that I've been wanting to work on for a very long time. To start tracing that tree would just be incredible because they're everywhere, absolutely everywhere.
Be a lot of stories to uncover, a lot of different
Oh
people
my
as
gosh.
well, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It would certainly be a multi-season and series documentary that you'd have to do
There's a
for
lot of
something like
content.
that. Yeah, it would be. It would be.
From increased traffic to scorching heat, summer conditions can put your most valuable turf to the test. The combination of Contec DG18918 and Fulltech LQ See-Through from the Andersons delivers premium nutrition, improves root structure, and strengthens overall stress tolerance. From the ground up, this duo builds strong, resilient turf ready for the challenges of the season. To learn more, visit andersonspro.com/beattheheat.
So Florida won, and they had the Stanley Cup at the Elbow Room by 8:00.
Oh my gosh,
would have been nuts to be down there.
AM
I
or
guess the
PM?
streets. AM. They stayed in the dressing room till I think 4 or 5 o'clock, and then they ended up going. There was videos of guys ringing some of their neighbors' doorbells to be like, "We have the Stanley Cup. Come outside and party with us."
No way.
And then they made it to they were at the Elbow Room for like 8 a.m. or something like that. And I've seen a couple of videos of guys, and they're just so drunk. They look so tired.
So I've obviously been out of the loop. What did they win it on Sunday or Monday?
Tuesday, I think the game was.
Tuesday,
They won it
okay.
Tuesday night, game 6 in Florida. So they won it back-to-back years at home, which is crazy to do.
That's
right?
amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah.
Well, that's a bummer. I was down that way on Monday. It would have been fun to stick around and enjoy that celebration down there at the Elbow Room.
Well, the two streets that kind of wrap around the Elbow Room were just shut down, and there was people
Totally
everywhere.
packed.
There were thousands of people down there.
I'm gonna have to take a deep dive and look at some videos today. And
Yeah, there's one of
You
Marshawn.
have-
Somebody comes behind him. He's up on like the balcony at the Elbow Room, and somebody hands him the cup, and he can't hold it. So the guy behind him's kind of holding it, and you see him just look back, go, "Thanks, man."
That's amazing.
They're having fun. Those guys are having
We're totally gonna have to figure out if we can do a show live from the Elbow Room at some point. We gotta set up shop during the day up on that top floor because it's quiet up there during the day.
Yeah. But
that
just to
would
be able to
be,
do one from there,
that'd
that
be
would
epic.
really good. Bring Tom from Apex up there, get him a few
Oh my
drinks.
gosh. Oh man, that's it. For anyone listening, if you have heard us talk about the Elbow Room, which hopefully you have many times, check it out if you're ever in Fort Lauderdale. It is legendary.
Yeah.
Easily my favorite bar anywhere I've been to around the country.
And you'll be surprised too. Like when I used to hear about the Elbow Room, I thought it was like a fancy place. You go and you touch elbows with all these rich people. It was the Elbow Room, right? Nope. That place is a fucking gong show.
That's it. That's it. There's nothing fancy about it. It's a cash only bar. Like it just locked in the loaded,
live band every day. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
what a riot! What a
Yep.
riot!
Yeah,
We'll make it
run
back.
into guys like Jerry and it's just epic. It's I don't even know which episode I came on and started working with you here, but it's been an absolute pleasure being a part of the Turf Today podcast and working with you, Adam. Appreciate all the listeners, all the support from our partners. I'm reminded of the difference that this show makes every time I travel. Very fortunate to run across. I can't even count the number of people that I encounter at these different events and different courses and places I go. And just again, it's a great reminder of the impact that this is having when people come up to you and let you know how much they enjoy your podcast, how much they've taken from the lessons that our guests have been able to share on this show. So, it's been an absolute pleasure being a small part of this show. Thank you, Adam, for starting that conversation and bringing me on board. And again, thanks to all the listeners, all the partners. Couldn't do it without all of you.
Yeah, Brian nailed it right on the head. We couldn't do the show without the sponsors, everybody that listens, everybody that pushes the pace. We appreciate everything that goes on here. I know we say it every week and we're always so grateful, but it's true. Like this is because of you guys, and the success of this show is a true testament to how much you guys love it and where you want to see it go. So thank you to all of our sponsors, Standard Golf, Anderson's, Apex 10, Flash Weather AI, and of course Toro. Also want to shout out to USGA for our partnership and everything we're doing with them. Episode 2 of Rolling with the Green section will drop this weekend. We're really looking forward to that one coming out. It's a really good episode too. 2 amazing agronomists come on there, talk about articles that they just did through the green section, and both amazing. Brian and I had a lot of fun doing that one, so you guys will certainly enjoy that. Next person we want to thank is Brian. I mean, we can't go this whole episode and not say thank you to that man, because Brian's done so much to this show. He's the perfect person for this, the way he acts, the way he carries himself, the amount of people he has around him. It's certainly lifted this show and been an honor to work with him. So thank you so much, Brian, and certainly looking forward to so much more. We also got to shout out Beats by Wooga on the intro track. The man just keeps coming with heater after heater for this show. I want to give a quick shout out to everybody that sent in videos today. Mark Prier, Darren Davis, M. Casey, Jeremiah Mincy, Dave Bilecki, Scotty Heebs, John Lamoureux, Jamie Knorr, and of course, the boys at Standard Golf. The last group of people we want to thank are our families. Both Brian's family and my family have made incredible commitments for these businesses and for our brands and for everything we're doing here. And we can't thank you guys enough for all of the support and all of the extra help. Brian's wife, Lauren, is amazing. My wife, Blake, has been instrumental in keeping this business going and helping me out when I need it. So thank you to you guys. You don't know how much we appreciate what you do and how important you really are to us. So we will see everybody next week. Keep those reels sharp. We're going to get right back with another great episode, right back to how things were last week.